always had to slow down to get around that corner. And we were almost expecting a shell to come in while we were there, because the Germans would fire periodically shells on that corner. So it was kind of a dangerous road to travel on, and we didn't see any other United States servicemen around, just us guys at the OP. But at that time, the Battle of Bulge has only been going on slightly over a week, and the American forces had been in disarray because of the surprise attack that the Germans made with every tank that was available. So they pull our guns out at night and go to someplace else where they had to pull other guns out. Our guns would fire a couple of rounds and then come back to our location to make the Germans think that the guns were still this heavy concentration of artillery. The big brass wanted the Germans to think all of our guns were still there. So our guns were pulling to different locations just to fire a couple of rounds and then come back. But we were kind of a lonely bunch up there. But one thing the President had promised every American serviceman were a guarantee of a hot turkey dinner for Christmas Day, regardless of the circumstances. That sounded good. About 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we called back to where our guns were and said we were promised a turkey dinner. So they got to the head cook. We forgot all about you. So we had K-rations again that day. So that was the town of Lindern. Kind of a dangerous place, but there were other places that were just as dangerous or more so. I never did write President Roosevelt a letter about that. But we were at one location where we were firing our guns, or our guns were set up to fire, and all hospitals have a white cross on them, and even in wartime you're to recognize that and not fire on them unless you're sure that they're using it for something other than a first aid station or hospital. So we were watching that hospital over on the kind of a little valley, maybe a mile away, a little less than that, and we could see a lot of vehicles coming in and out of there. And so we radioed back to headquarters. They got the authorization. Well, they said, watch it a few more hours. And they came back. We said, we know this isn't just a hospital. So we got the authorization to bring fire upon that hospital, a thing that almost against the law, but we could see that it wasn't being used as a hospital. And I can remember the adjustments that were made, and the first shell that went through the roof of that place, and stuff going every direction from that hospital. So that's one of the things that kind of vivid in my memory. 65 years ago, is it? Long time ago. So that was a German hospital. We were going through a town that we had just cleared. The infantry had just gone through the town. And another fellow and I don't remember if it's Bradley or not, we opened a door to a house and walked in, and there were 2 German soldiers sitting there with their rifles across their lap looking at us. And I thought they were alive, but they didn't move. I don't know if it was half an hour later, or whether it's 2 seconds later, I decided these guys are dead. But for a few seconds I was very frightened. I thought sure that they were going to be pulling their rifles up and firing them at us. The infantry had just gone through, whether they got these guys with bullets or a hand grenade. I didn't check the soldiers to see what they looked like. And I don't think that's where I got that steel helmet either. But that was a surprising thing to me when I saw that. We were going through, well, I forget the date that we crossed the Rhine River. One of those prime places now where people take vacations to take a cruise down the Rhine River and back. Well, our cruise happened to be in a Jeep crossing on a pontoon bridge. Somewhere here I have a picture of our captain, Captain Flower, standing up in his Jeep with his hand on the top of the windshield, surveying everything as he crossed the Rhine River. But I remember crossing the Rhine very distinctly, and Captain Flower looking out over the situation. That's one place that our troops were able to save a bridge, Remagen or something like that. Quite a few GIs put their lives on the line to get across that bridge to keep them from blowing it up. But they did, and they saved the bridge from being blown up. Although we didn't cross on that bridge, we crossed a few days later on this pontoon bridge. But we got off into the east of the Rhine. We were staying less and less time in one location. We were going across pretty good rate of speed in the advancement. But we went through a town, and Siebold went into he's Lieutenant Siebold. He went into a jewelry shop, and he was looking around, and he saw a picture not hanging straight on the wall. He just went over to straighten the picture, and it fell off, and there was a hole. Siebold couldn't see into it, but he put his hand down and he pulled out watches. It was a jewelry store. The jewelry owner had departed, and he thought that would be the safest place for his watches. That evening, going through the chow line, Lieutenant Siebold was going from person to person. Here, would you like a new watch, new German watch? So he was just handing them out right and left. Boy, it wasn't a half hour later, the order came down. Anyone that's caught looting is going to be court-martialed. Siebold took the watches that he had left. He'd already given away quite a few. He went up in the attic of the house that he was staying in, and he hid those watches up against the rafters at the top of the roof. And as he's telling the story at one of our reunions, he said, someone's living in that house right now, and he doesn't know there's watches up there in that attic. That was kind of a humorous thing there for Lieutenant Siebold. He was one of the nice guys. He was a nice lieutenant. He was a graduate of Nebraska U, but he was in ROTC training all the time in college, Reserve Officer Training Corps. So he stepped straight from college into the military, and he came directly to us at the 754th at the very beginning of our battery. So he happened to be the lieutenant that was directly over the survey section. And other guy said, we sure wish we had Siebold for our commanding officer here. And he was just a regular guy. And now I met all the lieutenants afterwards at the reunions that we've had. They all seem like nice guys. This Lieutenant Warwick, I saw him at several, and he said to Mildred, he said, you remind me of my wife. He said that time after time. And we had a Lieutenant Ford. He did almost any and everything that he told him to do. He was an officer, but he was told to do certain things too. And I asked him one time, well, what was your specific job during the war? He said, well, if an order was given to either Lieutenant Seabold or Lieutenant Warwick that they didn't want to do, they'd give the job to me. So he had to do the dirty work. Well, this is Lieutenant Ford. Concerning Lieutenant Ford, this is an interesting story. We got out of the service according to the points we had. Years of service and other things was in the calculation. And he could see, him being a lieutenant, he was going to be late getting back to the United States. So whatever job they had him doing, he got into the record department. He found his own records, and he put in an order for this Lieutenant Joseph Ford to get back to the United States. He changed the orders for himself. He said, that's the first thing I ever did wrong, but I didn't get caught doing it. But you know, that's Stephen and I. He and Stephen converse right now. That's the respect that Stephen has for some of these guys that I served with. But that's Lieutenant Ford. During those bad days of the war, both Bradley and I got a 3-day pass to go to Brussels, first of all, to get away from the front lines for a while and rest. It's called R&R, Relax and Rest, or something like that. So we got a 3-day pass to Brussels. It was enjoyable for us. And then after that, we each got a 3-day pass to Paris. So they hauled us on a truck all the way to Paris from, shall we say, the front lines. I don't know, it must have been the better part of a day that we're traveling in the back of a truck. But we stayed in a reasonably nice hotel in Paris, and we got to see the Eiffel Tower. Boy, what a spectacular sight that is. And then the Arc de Triomphe. And so that was an enjoyable trip that both he and I still remember. I have a picture someplace of he and I with a group of people that were on a tour of Paris, but I have no idea where that is. I thought it'd be in this stuff, but it isn't. But those are two trips that Bradley and I took together. One was a football player and the other was a lunkhead. Okay, now concerning the daily life, what did we do in the daytime when there wasn't anything else to do? I don't remember the most of that. One thing I do remember, a guy by the name of Salih happened to be a man from Iowa. And we got showers, I think it was every 6 weeks or something like that. They brought in portable showers, and you had to be fast. The water turned on for just a few seconds. You get soaked up and washed off and out of the shower, and the next person coming in. I don't remember the minutes, but it wasn't very many. And that was our shower. Imagine trying to wash your hair in that little short length of time. Well, we would do the best we could washing up. The thing I remember now about Salih, it was a cold morning. Here we were in our, wrapped up in our coats. Salih brought out his steel helmet, like that German, only it was an American helmet. He had, he'd heated up some water in this German house, and he was out there washing himself. He didn't have any clothes on either. Everyone was kidding him about being out in the public doing that. He said, well, I'm going to have to wash. And he used some language that wasn't too good. And there he was putting himself on display. I don't know why I remember such things, but that was Salih. lot of times when the war was over, we really didn't have anything to do. But one day, Lieutenant Sebo said to me, Bishop, would you like to take a run up to the, not the Potomac River, the Blue Danube River. I said, sure, let's go. I made sure there was gas in the tank, by the way, and drove up to the beautiful Blue Danube River. We got to it, and it was nothing more than a dirty stream. Nothing spectacular about it. Well, there may be places that the water is a pretty blue, but where we saw it, it was anything but pretty and blue. But anyway, that was the Blue Danube. We did get to see that. Back during the wartime, the war was almost over, and we'd been given instructions: if you capture a German prisoner or multiple prisoners, we were told where to take them. Well, the person I was with, and I don't remember who it was now, it was a radio operator, but we saw a German soldier go over a bank. So he stopped and got out and hollered at him and come out with his hands up. So he came out with his hands up. But now what were we going to do with him? And we talked back and forth. I don't want to put him in the back seat. How about the windshield? So we thought that was a good idea. I wonder if he still remembers that, by the way. But here it was, cold, and we set him on the hood of the Jeep, arms out, legs straight out on the hood. Now it's probably doing 35 miles an hour at least, and that freezing soldier. I don't think I thought this serves him right. I don't think I was thinking those thoughts at all. I was just thinking about getting him to the place where he was supposed to be without him attacking us. So anyway, we got him dumped off okay. So that's one of the things that took up our time that day. Well, when the war was over, well, it was rumored for us for days ahead of time. I hear that the war is over. I didn't believe it until we got the Stars and Stripes newspaper, which we did get every week. Stars and Stripes newspaper. And it told of the atomic bomb. We heard rumored it was a little tiny thing that had so much power it destroyed a whole city. Well, it was small, but it weighed quite a bit. It was a powerful bomb. And we dropped it one day, and a few days later we dropped another one. And the Japanese knew that they were in for it, so they asked to surrender. We were being primed to go to the Pacific. Some people say we'd have had 1 million men killed trying to invade Japan. But that's where they had us headed to go and how to get there. So when the war ended in Europe, boy, what a glad day that was, and the war ended in the Far East, oh boy, that was good news. So we're very happy about that.
What about VE Day?
What's that?
Victory in Europe Day.
Oh yeah, Victory in Europe. Sure, that was a happy day. We had seen so much destruction, so much death. The infantrymen saw a lot more than we did. They're the ones that fought the hard battles. I think I've told you too. We were with an infantry company that was going to jump off the very next morning about 4 o'clock in the morning. And this one guy said, "I'm not going to do it. He says, I'm going to shoot myself in the foot or some such thing. Other people told him, don't do that. You'll be court-martialed for doing such a thing as that. And he kept saying, well, this is probably 8 o'clock at night. He says, I'm not going to jump off and go with you guys on this attack. Well, we don't know if he did or not. But that guy was so afraid of being killed in an attack that he was willing to shoot himself in the foot. Now, can you imagine all the pain that would cause him for months afterwards? But that's what he was talking about. But I don't know if he ever did it. But those are the fears that some people have. You know, some people disappeared. They never heard from him again. When they catch those guys, they were court-martialed. Anyway, we were getting ready to go to the Pacific, and we didn't look forward to that at all. We had kept up with the invasion of the islands and the heavy casualties we suffered there. You've heard of Okinawa. Your Uncle Newt was on that island of Okinawa, not as a fighter, but he was in the construction battalion, Seabees. Jack was there, and that's where they got to know each other, on Okinawa. But we were very glad when the war ended. Oh, what a big relief it was. Of course, then what am I going to do now? What's there to do? Well, we didn't have to go to the Pacific. We were very happy for that. After the war was over, they had all these vehicles around Europe. What are they going to do with all these vehicles? It was decided to put them in huge staging areas, as they called it. Big parking lots is what it was. So for a few months I was driving trucks from where they were left back to these huge staging areas. Now, we went through a town, every time we drove them, we called it Lyon. The correct pronunciation is Lyon. If you've ever heard the pronunciation Lyon, that's Lyon, France. We call it Lyon. But we didn't go through Paris. We drove further south from Paris and parked these trucks on huge parking lots. We got to come home from Europe according to the years of service that we had and any awards. So we were so glad to be headed for a port, to be coming home. We took off from Le Havre, France. We weren't out of port a half an hour before the most of the ship was sick and vomiting. A terrific storm was going on at sea. I used to tell people we had 90-foot swells. That's what we were told. And I got to wondering about that afterwards. Is that really true? And then I read here just not too long ago, yes, that kind of stuff was happening on the Atlantic Ocean. So everyone was ordered to stay below deck. It's too dangerous out on top. But the smell was so horrible. Just the smell of it was making me sick. And one of the crewmen said, you can get some fresh air, taking a ladder down here so far, you can go up and get some fresh air. So I went up. Boy, it felt good to have that cold, fresh air blowing on me out of that sickening smell below deck. But I went up there quite a bit. I don't know what they would have done to me if they'd have caught me up on deck like I was. I was always hanging on to something. But looking at the water, we'd be looking at the sky when the ship was at an angle like that. Looking at the sky. And then dropping down, then all I could see was water. It looked like the ship was going to go right down to the depths. And day in and day out, this went on. That was one of the miserable experiences about coming home, and fearful also. Did you ever hear the Liberty ships during World War II? Well, Henry Kaiser of the Kaiser Steel Mill, the guy who built the car, the Henry J. You don't know that? Well, he even produced cars. Well, at the beginning of World War II, when we had to get supplies to Europe, he invented and made Liberty ships. It was a small ship that would hold a lot of cargo. Well, that's what we were coming back on one of those little Liberty ships. And the banging, the creaking, we thought that ship was going to come to pieces. It was noisy, fearful. I think I prayed some too on that. All the noise, the creaking of that ship. And there's one fellow claimed he didn't get out of bed. I'm not sure how he could do that. He claimed he didn't get out of bed all the way home. I don't know. But that was a horrible experience on the high seas on a little junk ship, so to speak. Well, I was glad to get home. Well, I got home from Europe. I landed on the East Coast. They put me on an airplane to Texas, changed planes there, or refueled it was, and flew on to Long Beach. And down at Fort MacArthur. I don't know if it's still down at Long Beach or not, but it was a military base at Fort MacArthur. And that's where I was going to get my